The meeting
thanks, Pauline. I also see that Councillor Lowe has his hand raised. It's been like that way since the start of the meeting, so I'm not sure if it's a mistake or whether Councillor Lowe does want to say something before the meeting starts.
Chair, I did also observe that Councillor Lowe has his hand raised, but he's obviously not at the meeting ready to participate to ask a question. So obviously he can hear if he chooses, but
right,
I don't think so. I think if we just leave that at the moment, and obviously we can come back to it if there is a particular question. So
thanks very much.
The meeting is recording.
John, I wouldn't bother with it. Just ignore it if.
Right, it's okay. He's got his hand down now. It's okay.
That's excellent. That's good. So what I will do now, Chair, with your permission, is to take this adherent for this morning's meeting. So Councillor Allison is here, as is Councillor Anderson. Councillor Bradley is also here. Councillor Brown is here. Councillor Chalmers is here. Councillor Convery is also here. Councillor Cooper is here. Councillor Craig also. Councillor Devlin. Councillor Dorman is also here. Councillor Fagan is here, as is Councillor Faulkner. Councillor Hamilton is here. Councillor Harrow is also here. Councillor Horsham is here. Councillor Lockhart is here, as is Councillor Logan. Councillor Loudon, yes, Councillor Loudon is here. Councillor Lowe is here. Councillor Mars is here. Councillor McAdams is also here. Councillor McGuigan is here. Councillor Miller is here. Councillor Nealon is here. Councillor Ross is here. Councillor Shearer is also here, as are Councillor Wark and Councillor Wilson. So with that, Chair, I'll hand back to you for the business of the meeting.
Thanks very much, and welcome colleagues to this climate change sustainability meeting. I would like first of all to apologise for the delay in closing the executive committee and having us start half an hour later. But that aside, we'll go on with the business in this committee. First item is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations? I see no hands raised, so we'll move on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Does any colleague have anything to raise in the minutes of the previous meeting? I see no hands raised, so I'm going to move the minutes as a correct minute.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 3. It's a monitoring item, Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy Update. It's on pages 13 to 62. And can I invite Leslie Hinchelwood to speak to this report, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So my report provides an update on the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy for 2021-22 Action Plan at Q2. Section 3 provides background on the Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy and the Action Plan. And the Action Plan is reported using Improve, and a full copy of this report can be found at Appendix 1. At the beginning of the Improve report, you'll find the strategies diagram, which outlines the 3 themes of Sustainable Council, Sustainable Environment and Sustainable Communities, and the strategic outcomes for each of the themes. You'll also find a summary of the relevant Global Sustainable Development Goals that each of the themes contribute to at a local level. The report then provides the quantitative measures, both performance and contextual. The performance measure highlights progress towards each of the outcomes, and the contextual measures, although they're not in the full scope of the Council, they do, however, provide a health check for the area. The next part of the Improve report provides progress on the 2021-22 improvement actions towards each of the outcomes. Section 4.2 of the covering report provides a summary of the progress on the quantitative measures, and you will see that there's still a high number of measures that will be reported later, and many of these are due to figures not being available until the end of the year, so we'll report them at Q4. There are 3 amber measures that have seen some slippage in the first 2 quarters of the year, and these measures relate to household waste and recycling. Paragraph 4.3 of the covering report provides an explanation of the slippage and how this will be rectified. Paragraph 4.4 of the covering report summarises progress on the improvement actions, and the majority are on schedule or complete. There are 7 actions where they have seen some minor slippage, and the table at 4.5 provides information in relation to these amber measures and what management action is being taken to address any slippage. Paragraph 4.6 of the covering report provides an overview of some of the highlights in the first 2 quarters of 21-22, and I won't read all of these, however I just wanted to point out a few. The first being the Beat the Street Rutherglen and Cambuslang game took place, and within the first 2 weeks of the project, approximately 60,000 miles had been travelled by almost 8,000 people. So another real good success in Beat the Street. Another highlight was that the council was a core partner in a project called Green Heat and Green Space, and this was led by Green Space Scotland. And the project was set up to identify and quantify specific opportunities in our green and blue spaces within urban settlements across Scotland, and how this can support low carbon heat solutions like heat pumps and district heating networks. So the project was primarily focused on solutions for decarbonising the public sector, and the findings in the report will be incorporated in the Council's considerations from the Strategic Energy Review. The last point just to highlight is the Young People Sustainability Forum that was established to discuss how young people can lead on aspects of climate change and sustainability within the school curriculum, but also how they can influence decision making across the authority. And an offshoot of the forum was the Climate Emergency Newsroom that took place during COP26. The young people reported on the events and decision making from COP to the primary school audience, and the blog that they prepared has now been accessed worldwide. If I can bring back to sections 5 to 9 of the covering report, outlines any implications, but there's nothing significant to mention here. So if I just can bring you back to section 2 of the covering report, and the committee is asked to note the progress made at Q2 in respect of the actions and the measures within the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan for 21-22. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Leslie. And yeah, it's a very good report, and as I say, the COP26, I'm glad that that's been recognised, and hopefully it will go forward and receive more acclamation. Not a good report in total. I see we've got some hands raised. Robert?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Can I raise 3 separate points on me? First of all, Beat the Street. Beat the Street was a tremendous success. It's the second time it's come to Rutherglen, and I'm a big fan of it. However, I do think it actually needs to be slightly more, if you like, not exactly mainstream, but linked into other initiatives going forward. Because what we want to see here is not just the excitement of the Beat the Street thing, but a longer-term change in sustainable habits in terms of children walking to school and all that sort of stuff. So I just wonder if there's any kind of thoughts about how that might be done. And is Beat the Street coming back next year, and if so, in what areas? Second point is on the green flag parks, which I mentioned as being Straven, Cambuslang and Castlebank. Now, that's obviously a very worthwhile accolade, but I wonder if there's any plan to extend the number of parks that manage to achieve green flag status, because that's obviously the kind of benchmark in these things, and it'd be very nice to move forward a little bit on that one if we're able to do so, not least because of its connection with things like weed killer use and so forth as well, which are part of the standard. And then finally, just on recycling, as a point I've made before, recycling is fairly static at the moment, isn't it, in a sense, and obviously been hit a wee bit by the COVID and different things to do with all of that. The big move forward is going to be to do something with regard to the tenemental properties in South Lanarkshire And I wonder if we have any kind of sort of time scale on that. It's been talked about for a while, but I don't think we've actually got it pinned down in terms of when there's going to be a further move forward on the recycling figures there, which I think are so important. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Robert. Leslie?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Brown. So the Beat the Street, I would need to check probably with our colleagues in air quality what the plans are for the next phase of Beat the Street, but I can find that out and come back to you on that. I do know that our colleagues in air quality do try and link the Beat the Street to further initiatives that they do have with our campaigns and looking to promote that model shift from using vehicles to walking. They do have a lot of work that they do in conjunction with education in our schools. So again, I can speak with our colleagues in air quality and come back to see if there's anything further that they have as part of their action plan for air quality. The green flag parks, again, I probably would need to speak with our grounds colleagues on if they have any plans to extending those green flags for any of our other parks. So again, I can come back to you on that. And the recycling statistic on timescales, that's something else that I would need to check with my colleagues. I don't know if Alistair's on the call and maybe he would be able to pick up on the green flag for parks and recycling, because that's his service as well.
Hi, Chair, are you okay if I come in on that?
Yeah.
Robert, most of our green flag parks are very much led by local groups. So if there's any specific parks that are interested in taking that forward, we're more than happy to look at supporting them to take that forward. And as you say, we've been very successful, across a number of our parks, and have held that for a number of years. So by all means, if there's any specific parts, let me know and we can have further discussions on it. And again, I think from the recycling, I think it was a discussion we had at a previous meeting. We do have plans to try and look at tackling some of the tenemental issues as far as changing the mix of what we collect in flats, to see whether that would improve the recycling we've got. We've got a lot of contamination in our mix, and we're thinking to move to more paper collection and cardboard collection. So that's something we're looking in the background. We don't have a timescale for it yet, because we want to do a lot of promotion on it, get flyers out and get stickers for the bins to try and encourage people to participate. So that's been worked in the background just now with PR.
Alistair, are we under, let me come back, Chair, are we under any kind of, if you like, targets to be met from national government on that particular aspect, the recycling one? It used to be under EU things, but presumably it's not quite the same anymore.
Yeah. Again, we're looking to try and get up to 50% recycling. So from our point of view, a lot of the issues we have are in tenemental properties. So again, that's where we're looking to see whether we've changed the size of bins. We've moved to communal bins, and some properties we've moved to individual bins. But we now think it's a time to actually look at the mix of what we're collecting to see whether that would make any improvement in it. So we are tackling things, as we go along, but the challenges are just getting to the next level as far as recycling is concerned. We were also hoping as well that we would see an improvement through the deposit return scheme, but obviously that's not in yet. But we do think there'll be a huge improvement with recycling coming through that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Can I just remind members, and this is not, I'm not trying to stop conversation here, but we do get these papers timelessly, and if there is things that we're not sure officers are going to be able to answer on the day, we can always let them know our thoughts and try and get a report, and they can still ask the same questions at the meeting, but at least then we might be able to get more information actually on the day. So I say it's not a criticism, Robert, it's just letting people know that, we could get that information through officers and it would be able to be relayed to everybody on the actual day of the meeting. Thanks very much. Ian Harrow.
Thanks, Chair. This may be another one of these questions then. The 60,000 miles by 8,000 people in Beat the Street sounds pretty good. Is there a comparison with other similar areas as to whether better, worse, or whatever? I know doing kind of 60,000 miles is good in itself, but just to see how it compares. Thanks. I'm saying nothing, but in the Hamilton one, I did 692 miles myself, so that was my contribution. But I'm not sure if there's a comparison. Who would like to come in that one?
Yeah, just to say, Councillor Harrow, there will be a comparison, and again, I will be speaking to my colleagues in air quality, so I can ask that question and feed that back along with what the plans are for the next Beat the Street and how we're planning to mainstream that. So I'll include that in that inquiry and come back to you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Katie.
Hi everyone, thanks very much, Chair. You've already mentioned it briefly, Chair, but I just wanted to echo your comments about the fantastic work that was done, the Climate Emergency Newsroom project that was run by young people for young people. I had a really interesting chat with a head teacher at a primary school about talking to younger children in particular about climate change. So I've always been really interested in information literacy, so about knowing your sources, accurate information, teaching children and young people about how to evaluate what they're reading and seeing. And when you've got such a huge, emotive and frankly potentially frightening, as she was telling me, topic like climate change for young people, lots of deliberate misinformation and disinformation out there, those are really important skills. So it wasn't only a fantastic opportunity for the young people themselves to take part, but it was a really valuable project for other young people and children in the area to be able to tap into as well, and indeed across the world, because it did really take off, and it was a fantastically successful project, but it had that element of added value, which I know that we'll be building on as well through the forum going forward with that engagement. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Katie. These are welcome comments. Alec? Alec?
You're on mute.
Sorry, somebody muted my computer. Where was I? Yeah, over the last couple of years with COVID, how society has been operating has been completely different. Are we able at all to quantify the effect that has had? For instance, household rubbish, I think, will be up because people have been at home more. There has been less travelling, etc. And so the reason to quantify that would be to be able to identify properly whether we are on the correct trajectory or whether it has been influenced at all by how we've been operating under COVID. Second point I would want to hear your views on is one of the things you're hearing nationally is about we'll call it the misuse of recycling, etc., where councils, among others, have been getting third parties to do a lot of that work, and yet we've found it's just been exported and dumped somewhere. Do we do any follow-up to make sure that all the stuff that we're wanting recycled is treated properly, or is it all going through our own recycling centres? And after that, what happens to it? Is that followed through at all?
I'll bring in probably Alan that. But I think we are continually updating our data on that, Alec. But I'll bring Alan and see if he can answer the problem or the question.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. You're right, Alec. We did see a significant increase on household waste during the initial starts of the pandemic, with people living more from the house and working more from the house. We are tracking that. We have seen it reduce slightly, but it's not back down to pre-COVID levels. And probably, given the continuation of working from home, it probably won't drop back down to that levels for a wee while. So our focus just now has been trying to encourage people to get back into the habit of recycling properly, but also very conscious as well that part of the reason there was an increase in contamination over the period was that the volume of waste and people putting their waste across recycling bins as well as their residual. So we're trying to get that message out about managing their waste properly, but we are keeping a track of the volume of waste going through the household collections, but also the stuff that's going through our civic community sites. As far as we have contracts in place for all our residual and our recycling contracts, and all the recycling stays within the UK. And we do have monthly meetings with our contractors, and we also do tracking of where our commodities go to make sure they are properly managed. So that's part of the contract conditions we've got in place.
Okay, Alec.
Yeah, good.
Thanks very much. Monique?
Chair, it was just in the back of something that Alistair had said. Alistair, see the schools, I thought there was a problem with the schools correct me if I'm wrong, with them basically like separating their recycling, because it then meant it came out of the school's budget if they wanted to say put all their plastic bottles in the one area, and that was a reason why there was a certain amount of recycling that wasn't getting done, because it meant it came out of the individual school budgets. Has that now been rectified, that's now done differently to what it was done before? I'm just thinking what we can do to support them.
Again, it's the same process that was in place previously in schools. If the schools are looking to do recycling, then there's a third-party contract that they would speak to them about what mix of bins they want. We are, through Emma Berry, speaking more to the schools about what they want on a local basis and how we can support that. But I'm also very conscious that I don't want all the children and pupils to be recycling, to be put in bins, and there's no way for that then to be taken off site and recycled properly, and it all ends back in the residual waste stream. So again, it's trying to close the circle to make sure if we do the recycling that it gets fully through and processed properly. But again, it's done on an individual school basis as far as what mix of bins they've got.
Okay, Chair, subsequently, is there anything that we can do like through this committee to help support the schools then? I know it's going to be a budgetary constraint, but effectively we've got the kids, it's like we've got the schools, it's just like, they get like, different certificates and accolades for recycling and doing different things, which we want to encourage as much as possible. But the fact is, they want to run initiatives and they do different weeks on different things, but because of budgetary constraints, then it's not necessarily something that the head teacher is going to want to spend their money on when they've got so many other things to do. So what can we do on this committee to help support the schools and help support the recycling without obviously buckling Alistair's department, but to make sure that we are actually, instead of just being a talking shop, what we can actually do to help support the schools, which then in turn helps the environment and makes us a good council.
Again, if you're okay, Chair, again, from the point of that, I'm quite happy to try and support the schools where we can. Monique, the work that Emma's doing on the litter strategy, we are having a lot more close contacts with the school to try and tie them into, improving what they're doing within the school and then managing that out with it. So again, those links are already there. As part of the development of that, Emma will identify if there's any financial support that could be provided, and that would be part of the overall discussion about how we develop the litter strategy and the action plan that will come from that.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
We can tie up our talks with education and see how we can possibly progress this. Thanks very much, Monique. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations. I'm going to move the recommendations. I need a seconder.
I'll second you. I'll put myself
Right, okay. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to item 4, which is Good Food Strategy, Q2 update, pages 63 to 100. And can I invite Helene Gourjon to give us this report, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So my report provides an update on the status of the Good Food Strategy actions and measure at Q2 of 2021-2022. Section 3 sets out the background, and the report uses improve to report actions and measures. The Good Food Strategy Q2 update is available in Section 4. So there are two parts in the action plan. The first part is a quantitative measure for performance and contextual measures, and the second part contains improvement actions for each theme of the strategy. Section 4.3 provides a summary of the measures. So with regard to the performance indicators, 43% are green, 5% are yellow. So this refers to just one measure about the school meal uptake in primary school. And the year-to-year position and data include the April to June period when schools were not fully operating. So it doesn't reflect the uptake of a normal year. There is no red measure, and 52% will be reported at a later stage or are contextual measures. And so these are 11 measures in total. 3 of them are contextual, 4 of them are annual indicators, so they will be reported at Q4, and 4 of them are baseline indicators, which are not established yet. In relation to improvement actions, 3% are blue, 86% are green. There is no red and amber measures, and 11% are to be reported later. It means that 4 measures will be reported later because the reasons are different for them. The timescale has changed due to external reasons, or the project was initially planned to be developed during Q3 and Q4. The detail of the actions and measure is available in Appendix 1. In paragraph 4.6, you have an overview of some of the highlights under each theme. So I won't read all of them, but just to give you a quick overview under each theme. So for good food at home and in the community, so as community food organizations continue to play a key role in tackling food insecurity, the Council has continued to support them with food deliveries. So 7 organizations were supported on a regular basis, with others supported depending on needs. So it's more than 10,000 food parcels which were distributed from April to September. And some interesting food educational programs were also delivered by the Youth, Family and Community Learning Service from Education, and other program from the Unpaid Work Service from Social Work. And you can find more information about this program in the report and in annex. In relation to good food in the public sector, so menus in schools are now compliant with the new regulation for nutritional requirement for food and drink in schools. And the Council has also supported the organisation of a food session at the Lanarkshire Meet the Buyer event, with the objective to provide information to local businesses on how they can supply food and drink to the Council. About the good food economy, so 92% of food businesses are compliant with food safety statutory requirements, compared to a target of 85%. The Council is also funding a coordinator post for Lanarkshire Ladder, which is a new local network for local food and drink businesses in North and South Lanarkshire. And the Economic Development Services has also been running a program to encourage groups and schools to build skills and employability in the food sector. In relation to food growing, so the number of plot holders on Council managed sites has increased by 80% with the opening of the new allotment site in Lammermoor in East Kilbride. About the good food and the environment, so the Council has signed in June the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, showing its commitment to tackle climate emergencies through integrated food policies. And finally, in relation to a good food governance, so a network composed of food stakeholders from the third, private and public sector is regularly meeting to discuss specific food topics, such as the impact of COVID-19 on food or the link between food system and climate change. And the membership to the UK network Sustainable Food Places has also been achieved in June, and this recognizes as a partnership approach that the Council is taking to achieve a change in relation to food issues. Section 5 of the report presents other food-related actions which are not included in the action plan because the decision to implement them was taken after the approval of the plan. So this includes the expansion of universal free school meals to P4 children and the development of the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snack scheme in nursery. Summer sessions hubs also took place in 14 locations in the area this summer for a period of 6 weeks, with breakfast and lunch served every day. Then section 6 to 9 outline the implication in relation to employment, finance, climate change, and there are nothing significant to report here. And I will finally refer you back to section 2, which is to note the 2021-2022 Q2 position in respect of action and measure within the Good Food Strategy.
Thanks very much, Elaine. It's a very good report. I'm actually amazed at how much we've still been able to do, both through our own efforts and communities, when we've still been under so many COVID restrictions. So, as I say, I'm amazed that we've still managed to do so much. I see Maureen has her hand up. Maureen?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Lean, for that. Just echoed what John said. It's amazing how much has been done, even though it's been quite challenging times. I'll just get two specific questions. The Sustainable Food Procurement Group, the session around procuring food and drink. Did you get a good attendance? Was there a good number of folk joined in? And was there any kind of key things that are of interest in terms of learning or further support that we can give around that? I'm thinking particularly about how it links into our community wealth building strategy. And it's kind of similar question, but I'm conscious that a lot of our community groups that are growing food, and it's probably this time of year when they start preparing all that. I was conscious last year that quite a lot of local groups here were growing food but were just donating it where they thought there was no. I'm wondering if we've got community groups who need a wee bit of support round about when they harvest fruit and vegetables and salad, all the stuff that folk grow over the summer. If there's any support we can give, or if there's been any discussions to talk about what support we can give about how best to use the produce that they grow.
Elaine?
Yeah, thanks, Mal, for your comments. So about the Sustainable Food Procurement Group. So yeah, we had a few meetings since we started this working group in April. So economic development is part of the group, procurement, facilities, rural development as well, social work as well, and SLLC. And then we have invited external people as well to hear their views and see how they were working, including other local authorities. So we had Scotland Excel participating and one of the other local authorities. And maybe the two main outputs for now from this meeting is one. It was the organization of the food session at the Meet the Buyer event, really to share information with businesses on how they can work with the council. And another output, which we are just starting to work on this one, it was a decision to commission an analysis to understand better the offer of food in North and South Lanarkshire, and to understand how we could link these businesses with the council. So we are just in the process of identifying a consultant to do that. In relation to food growing, I know that some of the groups are linked to food banks and community organizations, but and they are all linked with amenity services. So maybe there may be some we could maybe contact them again just to understand if there are any issues in terms of donation and it may be something to check, even though I think a lot of them are already connected, but we could further explore this maybe with amenity services.
That would be really good, Helena. I suppose I was just thinking as well about the supplier development programme and the support that they can provide to local food and drink businesses as well. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Maureen. Julia?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, really excellent report and some really good progress. I'm interested particularly on the free school meal uptake, which is lower than I know we would like it to be, and for complex reasons, despite an awful lot of work by the team to work in all different ways with schools to try and improve that. I'm wondering what else, the detail of what else we can be doing to raise the uptake of free school meal entitlement, free school meal where there is entitlement in secondary schools especially, but also whether there's a connection can be made where we're supporting food banks. And I know certainly locally schools and food banks are being linked up in my area, because sadly young people at school may be the connection to the family that needs that support.
That's a good question. So obviously the data we have, I think at the moment doesn't really reflect a normal year. We can be cautious with these figures. I know that automated enrollment has been established, so that people don't have to apply to access to free school meals. So this was one of the key actions to try to increase the uptake. And I think letters were also sent to all families to make them aware of this. And some work has been done in terms of dignity as well, to make sure there is no discrimination when pupils were accessing the free school meal. So I'm aware of a few actions which were undertaken in the past to increase this. In relation to the connection with food banks, I'm not too sure. I believe it's from each school will do its own connection with food banks. Indeed, I know that some of them are already connected with food banks, and I think one of the school even a food bank has opened, or a branch of a food bank has opened. But yes, there might be some more work to be done around that. Yeah, maybe more connection between schools and food banks when it is needed. I don't know if this answers the question.
Are you okay with that, Julia? Right, yeah, thank you very much. I see we have Alistair. Your hand's up, Alistair.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add on to what Helena had said. As you know, Julia, we do a lot of promotions in the school to try and encourage testing services, test different types of food, different menu items to try and make sure the menus is, acceptable for the children as possible within the guidance we do. And we'll be continuing to do that. We did see a change in behaviour over COVID, with people bringing in like packed lunches or not actually even attending school when the schools were closed. So we'll have to change that behaviour back the way and try and entice them back for the school meals. We're also working closely with education because we want to build it into the overall curriculum, and make sure it's not a facilities and an education. It's about the whole school process and trying to encourage them through education as well to uptake the free school meals. So that's kind of all going in the background. Our numbers are still below what we'd want to be, but it's not for no lack of trying as far as the services are concerned to try and promote it. Again, as far as the links to the food banks, we have a process in place specifically within primary schools where it's a pre-ordering service. So again, we've tried to make sure we minimise food waste by not just producing meals and hoping that the children will actually take them up. So we have minimum extra meals provided above what is normally, booked or ordered by the kids. So we've designed a lot of that out. The secondary is a bit more challenging because there isn't a kind of, we've given them an app to allow them to pre-order. So again, we're continuing to try and manage and minimise our waste in schools so that designing the food waste out rather than it being passed on to food banks. It was kind of our main focus before, but we are re-evaluating what is available at the school at the end of the day and what we actually do with it.
Thanks very much, Alistair, for those comments. Right, I see I've got Lynn. Lynn, your hand's up.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wondered if anybody could enlighten me, looking at the food growing section of this report. I see that sites have increased by 20%, and there are another couple of allotment sites in the pipeline. Can I ask, is there anything in the pipeline for the Hamilton area?
Again, Chair, if you're okay,
yeah,
we're actually considering 2 sites just now where we're looking to get ground conditions reports done to see whether they're appropriate. Again, I'm not keen to identify what those sites are just in case they're not appropriate because of ground conditions, but it is something we're very much aware of, that it's an area of South Lanarkshire, we haven't provided anything in addition to what was previously there. So it is something we're being worked on. We were given additional money through the budget setting process for food growing, and we would be looking to use some of that money for development of at least one site in Hamilton, but also maybe have our plans in place for a second site should more funds become available.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll be in touch with you soon over that. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We move on now to item 5, Scottish Government consultation on national litter and fly tipping, pages 101 to 116. And can I ask Emma to give us a report on this, please? Emma?
Yep, thanks, Chair. The purpose of the report is to advise the committee on the current Scottish Government consultation for the National Litter and Fly Tipping Strategy and to set out the proposed South Lanarkshire Council response to be submitted to the Scottish Government. The committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the overview of the consultation on the National Litter and Fly Tipping Strategy be noted, and that the proposed South Lanarkshire Council response be approved for submission for the Scottish Government by the 31st of March 2022. If we now move to 4.1, the focus of the consultation is to invite views on the planned approach to tackle litter and fly tipping in Scotland. Consultation response will inform the future policy of how this can be best achieved. A summary of the proposed response is outlined in 4.2, and a copy of the full proposed response is attached in Appendix 1. The Council is supportive of the proposals within the litter section of the consultation, and the Council is also supportive of the proposals within the fly tipping section of the consultation. The proposed response was developed incorporating views from officers within community and enterprise resources and also including environmental services. It should also be noted that South Lanarkshire Council are represented on both of the Scottish Government's working groups for litter and fly tipping. I now refer you back to 2.1, where the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations. That it be noted and also approved for submission to the Scottish Government by the 31st of March 2022.
Thanks, Emma. I see Monique has her hand up. Monique?
It was just to say that's a great report, and obviously I'm supportive of it. And it was also to say, Emma, you've been doing a lot of work, and I just wanted it recognised for everything that you're dealing with online through the East Kilbride litter pickers, because I know that you're getting a lot of emails, but you're getting a lot of compliments for everything that you're doing. So it's just to say thank you very much. I just wanted to just draw your attention, Emma. See on page 104, and this might be a question for you, or Alistair might take it. And it's the first one, and it's 1A, and it's like, do you support the proposed action to conduct research to understand the full range of influences on littering behaviours? I've spoken for years now since I came to council, and it's about the civic community centres and how I don't understand why we're not online. I know that before the pandemic we were intending going online, which then meant it would specifically be people from South Lanarkshire that were using South Lanarkshire civic community centres. Obviously, like, you know, when we were doing our avid checks, COVID, when they had opened, you know, when we were allowed to open back up, then obviously people were handing over utility bills and whatever else to prove that that's where they stayed. But we have such a stage where part of the problem that will come out from this litter picking strategy and the evaluation that you're going to do is that, you know, and something that the officers already know, is that the civic community centres, it's just, you know, the one in East Kilbride is used by people in, you know, Giffnock and Clarkston and further afield. So if it was online and people were booking, it would stop the traffic problems that are going out onto the Queensway. It would stop potential accidents. It would, you know, stop the frustration of people in the cars. It would stop people just dumping you know, litter because they don't want to wait in the queue because it's so long. And I just think if we went online, it would be much, much better. So how near are we to now going online? Because we were going to be doing that before. And thank you for your time.
Emma?
Jerry, okay if I come in that one?
Yes, I'll.
Yeah. Thanks, Monique. As far as the move to the online booking system, during the kind of pandemic, towards the end of the pandemic, most of our sites, 5 of our 6 sites, were managed by Viridor. They then transferred the contract to Biffa, and it's now Biffa that run 5 of the 6 sites. Given that there was a change, what we decided to do is we decided to pilot the booking system on the site that we manage in Carluke, and that's about to go live mid-end of this month for a period of, I think, 6 months, to evaluate how we see the benefit is. And that will be an online system where you can book your time slot, you identify what waste you've got. If you've got a bigger vehicle, you can book a longer slot. And again, there's similar challenges in Carluke that we have at East Kilbride as far as tailing traffic, impacting local businesses. So that was a site we had under our control, but we already started the discussions with Biffa that after the pilot, if it's felt it's successful and we want to look at rolling it out, then we would have a discussion with them about how we do that through their contract.
Okay, Chair, if I could just say, Alistair, thank you very much. That's very much appreciated and very helpful, and I'll look forward to the feedback in 6 months' time then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Monique. Joe?
Thanks, Chair. I really wanted to ask some questions about the enforcement, because the response quite rightly states that the enforcement powers have to be a more effective deterrent. So I'm wondering what, and also says, incidentally, and I agree with that, that the £500 penalty for some of the people who are dumping in large quantities just isn't really a deterrent at all. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to get some background information on this. Now, in terms of fixed penalty notices, the last time I looked into this, think we were issuing something about 59 or 60. This was for 2019, I think. That was the total number of fixed penalty notices that were issued in South Lanarkshire, and about 14 of them, I think, were issued in the East Kilbride area. What I'm curious about is where are we sitting just now in terms of the number of fixed penalty notices that have been issued, but also in a lot of the public messaging, and I've just checked on the council's website as well, the kind of maximum penalty is actually a fine of up to £40,000, but that would be, going through the full route and the full sort of level of prosecution and etc. I saw some figures in the papers a couple of weeks ago which suggest there were very few local authorities where that was taking place. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to get an overview of the fixed penalty notices that are issued, the number of prosecutions in South Lanarkshire that have gone the full distance, and what are the factors really that are impeding us from toughening up enforcement? Is it simply that the fine is not enough? And I know this is something that is being looked at a national level, or is there more to that? And I suppose just the final point is that when we report fly tipping, our workers or operatives on the ground would be expected to look for any indications. Not only would they lift it, but they'd be expected to see is there anything, is it receipts or envelopes or anything that might give away the identity of who's responsible for the fly tipping, or maybe in a roundabout way who might create a paper trail to find out who's responsible for the fly tipping. And I'm just wondering how often that actually happens, because do our frontline operatives actually have the time and the resources to go through that when we know they face all sorts of other pressures? So I'm really, those are my questions. It's just because I agree with what's in the submission. I'm just trying to understand what's behind it, because I think we do have to toughen up. We do have to create stronger deterrents, and I think that is ultimately what's going to solve the problem.
Thanks, Joe. I see, Emma, that Alice's hand up. If he wants to come in, Alistair.
I'll probably come in the last one first, as far as the grounds operatives are concerned. When we identify fly tipping, we have a process in place where we actually have bagged evidence bags, where so if they find any evidence on site, they would bag that up and that would be passed to environmental services to take enforcement. So that process is already in place. I do think the requirement for the level of evidence has increased, so it is a lot more difficult to get it all the way through to prosecution. But again, Emma might be able to expand on that, but it's something that we already have a process in place to deal with.
Emma?
Yeah, I definitely think there is improvements that we can make within our process, but that process is there. And in terms of any fly tipping that is identified by a member of staff or by a member of the public, we will look at what's there to make sure that we're not missing any evidence. If there is anything that leads back to either the person who's responsible initially for the waste, or for, say, if it was a company that had been transporting the waste and has then dumped it, we would look for that evidence, because again, this is the starting point to try and get that evidence to increase the prosecutions and increase the fixed penalty notices. Fixed penalty notices are very low. I can provide the figures to that and I can send them over. So it is something that we know that we need to look at that as a form of enforcement and as a deterrent, because even with the fixed penalty notices at the moment as a value, they are quite low. But if you're not seeing, whether it's in the media or whether it is through a freedom of information, if you're not seeing the numbers coming as a fixed penalty notices, then there's less of a deterrent there as well. In terms of the unpaid fixed penalty notices getting passed through the courts, that is something that I'm hopeful that through this national strategy, and with fly tipping being really, really promoted and strengthened, I'm really hopeful that that will create more of a focus, that it will help the court system. And when it is compared to other crimes, that's when there's the response that, oh, we don't have the time to deal with it because it's not as important. But it is when you look at the number of these fly tipping occurrences that are happening and the cost and also the social and environmental aspects that go along with it. So I think it is something that the national strategy really focusing on that will help strengthen. That being said, there's also a lot of stuff within the strategy consultation that focuses on the fact that they want more of an actual national campaign, and I think that will go a long way to emphasising the fact that there's not been that communication, that enforcement, that basically information and awareness that then helps local authorities and also private landowners sort of react to these things as well. So I do think that there's more that South Lanarkshire can do in the enforcement side, along with fixed penalty notices and passing on with the evidence, but we do have a process for that there, and it is something that not only our litter strategy will help with, but when it's tied in with the national litter strategy, I think it will prove very beneficial.
Thanks, Emma. I think that information would be welcomed by most of the councillors here. Thanks very much. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a shout out to APSI, being the chair of Waste and Recycling for Scotland for APSI. Any councillors more than welcome to come along to those meetings, and I'm sure anybody who's interested in this would learn a lot from taking part. The booking system is quite a hot topic at APSI just now, and there's all kinds of different methods of doing that. There's an app which some councils have promoted, and they've found that to be useful. There's always a case of you have to allocate a time slot. So for people just want to drop off a couple of boxes, it's not always the right thing for them. And there's also missed appointments, which run about 10 to 12%, depending on what system they're using. So there's all kinds of difficulties, but I'm sure that we'll be taking the information we're getting from other councils to improve the system that we're planning for South Lanarkshire. The other thing about fly tipping, the cost to some of these people to dump their waste is more than the cost of being caught in a fine, and that's why I'm welcoming the Scottish Government's consultation, because the punishment has to be greater than the cost of just doing it anyway. And some people are openly tipping because, well, if they get caught, it's £500, I'm no bothered. And that's just not acceptable in these days and ages. And you get the white van man, along with the evidence. You know, Jimmy's got his garden done, white van man's done the work. He's going to take away the rubbish. He dumps it in a road, the back road somewhere, and there may be a letter from Jimmy in his house who doesn't know what this white van man's done. So there's all kinds of difficulties with that as well. It's really torturous, but certainly the consultation and the increase in fines would be very welcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. I see we've got Alec. Alec?
Yeah, Chair. Joe raised a substantive point, but on what Peter was saying there, you could increase the fines you're charging astronomically. It won't make a difference unless we're actually catching people. So I think I would like to see the response we're putting in being a lot more firm on the need for being able to identify who's actually doing the fly tipping. Is there other things that can be done? For instance, should it be part of the planning process that a receipt needs to be given to the householder if they have done work, so that you know where that's gone and there is a audit trail? Don't know if it would work, but we're certainly needing to do something, because simply increasing fines will create a snigger, but it won't actually create anybody else being charged with fly tipping, and that is the problem we've got.
Thanks, Alec. I understand what you're saying there, and obviously, hopefully that's something, if we're going to have a national attitude towards it, hopefully that's something that we are looking to try and find better ways of catching people as well. Thanks very much. Katie?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm just saying thank you, Chair, and I welcome the report as well, and including the part of the response that's in there about legislation and enforcement powers having to be reviewed. What Alex was saying there about having to provide receipts and so on, I think that's potentially a sensible suggestion. One of the problems we've got in our ward, for example, is it's obviously been what Peter was saying, that somebody in a white van coming and doing a house clearance, and it's basically like the contents of somebody's garden hut or the contents of somebody's living room if they've been moving out of a flat or something that ends up being dumped. So, it's not as necessarily always building waste or garden waste. One thing I think it would be helpful, and it's following on from some of the comments that Joe was making, around enforcement and then being able to put fines in place and so on, is to know a wee bit more about the thresholds. What would, I'm talking about if you find evidence, what would constitute enough evidence to be able to say that it was that person that was involved. Because I think from speaking to constituents, they can get quite frustrated if they think nothing is going to happen to someone, if they've been able to turn around and say, oh, I saw it was a blue car that dumped that. And as far as they're concerned, that there was evidence that was there because they had witnessed something, but then, it's not at this being the right threshold, I suppose, for us being able to do anything about it. I think that causes a lot of frustration.
Thanks, Katie. Maureen?
Thanks, Chair. Maybe in my naivety, I do welcome the report, I really do. And just because I was coming to this committee today, I happened to watch the disclosure programme Dirty Business on BBC. I did not realise, I'll put my hand up, I did not realise how it was actually criminal organisation groups that do a lot of the tipping and everything. So I have to say, if anybody hasn't watched it, it's actually worthwhile because it was a learning curve for me. Thanks for letting me in, Chair.
No, you're quite right, Maureen. It's alarming how much money can be made out of this. Hence the reason why big business has started to get into it. Yeah, understand. I see Julia. Julia, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just a great response in support of all of what has been what will be submitted. I'm particularly pleased to see support mechanisms. I wish for support mechanisms for private landowners, knowing that certainly in the rural area, fly tipping can be often on private land that as a council we can't act upon directly, and that there's very defined guidance in terms of what SEPA will consider an actual active pollution issue. So large areas will be deemed. It will appear to the public as if the council is not acting when actually we are unable to act. So I'm really pleased to see a response in that report to that, and I'm wondering what else we can do to support landowners where the cost or the ability to remove the fly tipping is really prohibitive and actually encourages further fly tipping because it would appear nothing has happened.
Again, Chair, I'm quite happy to come in on that. Julie, we do work with landowners and environmental services where there's a lot of repeat fly tipping. So we do have discussions with them about, is there changing? Can we put bunds up? Can we change access through gates to make it more problematic for people to fly tip? You can't always stop it, but certain areas are designed that make it very easy for people to dump. So we have worked with a number of landowners across the council area to look at maybe putting grass bunds up and then put grass over it so it takes away the area that they can dump in. Unfortunately, what we tend to find is they move to somewhere else, but at least it is us working with landowners to try and stop that frequent fly tipping.
Thanks, Alistair. Jim Wardhaw.
Yeah, I was just following up to what Julia was saying here about helping private landowners. Have we done anything yet to correct the what I think is something that we should have corrected a long time ago, that if a private landowner removes rubbish that's fly-tipped on his land, we charge him when he goes to the council tip. Is there some way that we can at least allow the landowner, if he takes it on himself to clear the fly tipping from his land, that he doesn't get double charged by the council when he takes it to the tip?
Again, the process, our civic community sites are for household waste. They shouldn't be used for that type of waste. If they are used, then there would be a charge, because again, it's not council waste, and the council shouldn't necessarily be picking up the costs in relation to waste that's not originated in our land. But again, that's part of the discussion we're having nationally, because that is an issue that isn't unique to South Lanarkshire.
Thanks very much, Jerry.
Yeah, it's been a good discussion, Chair. But I see, I can go back 20 odd years and we're still talking about it. We need action. We need to name and shame them, because it's a blighting society and it caused nothing but mayhem. So let's stop the talking and let's get the action. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jerry. I don't think we're allowed to name and shame, but I'm hoping that with government intervention and it being a national scheme, that we do tighten up in what we're actually doing here. So thanks very much. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks very much. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thanks very much. We go on to item 6, which is Pesticided Free Council Motion Update, pages 117 to 124. Can I have Colin to speak to this, please? Colin. Is Colin available? Or is he on mute?
I was on mute, the dreaded mute there. Apologies.
Sorry, Colin, right? It's always somebody. I'm glad it was you and not me.
Thanks very much. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on work done to date in respect to the motion approved at the full council meeting on the 16th of December 2020 on a pesticide-free council. The committee is asked to approve the following recommendations. Note the content of the report, and that the next steps, as outlined in Section 7 of the report, be approved. Section 3 covers the background of the original motion. We had provided reports previously to the committee on the 10th of February and the 25th of August, and we agreed that we would provide a further report at the year end after a full year of the trials. Current 4 within the current position, we have, as agreed, continue to apply glyphosate-based herbicide products on the areas identified in the table below, using the current methods along with the trials that we have done. Just some figures in that section there for you. The service in the past, we have reviewed, and we've always reviewed where we apply glyphosate. And basically, based on the figures below, if we were using the full figures, we should have been using 5,250 litres. However, based on 2019 usage levels, the information we had through changes in pre-practice indicated we were 16% below that level. That continued in 2021, again with further reductions, and we were able to reduce again by a further 9%, which is approximately 400 litres. So we have continued to try and reduce the application of the herbicides in particular areas to try and reduce the use of glyphosate. The trials, as outlined previously, were in the main hot foam, hot steam, new waste spray, and Mancar ultra low volume lances. By way of a comparison, Appendix 1 of the report provides details of the findings of the pilots and demonstrations over a 1 hectare area. It should be noted that the total area, as detailed in Table 1, equates to approximately 525 hectares. Unfortunately, trials have not identified any suitable replacement that could be used across all land types, and this has made it impossible to accurately evaluate the financial implications. In addition, given the various environmental impacts associated with each alternatives, that we are still trying to identify a suitable environmental indicator that would allow a comparison across the options, and will continue to do so. Through the pilot of the hot foam alternative, established that while not applicable for widespread usage, it was suitable for particular areas, and after hiring the machine for a year, we purchased this machine. This machine will be used on those areas where we've stated that we will either reduce or not use herbicides, such as our green flag parks, and in dealing with non-native invasive plants. It'll also be piloted in other areas to hopefully again further reduce the use of glyphosate. To date, the findings on alternative methods of control clearly demonstrate the increased cost and efficiency of the alternative weed control methods. While most alternatives can be far more costly and less effective with reduced kill periods, consideration should be given going forward to some of these alternatives in particular situations or locations. Section 6 best practice. We have continued to attend any meetings, Teams meetings with the Amenity Forum, which we signed up to. And we also attended the annual conference in October, which provided further detail and insight in relation to alternative methods being used, and that those areas are considered more appropriate, and an integrated approach in dealing with weed control is most likely the way forward. It also provided additional information on new legislation which will be detailed in the new National Action Plan on the Sustainable Use of Pesticides. This is a 5-year plan which aims to minimise the risks and impacts of pesticides to human health and the environment. And it is national legislation, so it will cover all parts of the UK. The service continues to await the outcomes of the Scottish Government-led weed control survey completed in 2021. Timescales for this are not available at this time. However, the service will continue to seek an output from this survey to the APSI Ground and Streets Advisory Group. Section 7 is next steps. And although good progress has been made in 2021 with a reduction in herbicide use of 9% and the introduction of one of the alternative treatment methods, further work is required to identify other potential opportunities to expand their use. The service is also of the view that before further significant changes are implemented, it would be beneficial to see the outcomes of the Scottish Government-led weed control survey and the new National Action Plan on the Sustainable Use of Pesticides to ensure any potential changes to our service align with national strategies. The service would therefore propose that in 2022, it undertakes the following actions in relation to alternative methods and in preparation for the new legislation. Continue to review, and where glyphosate-based products are applied, target a further 10% reduction in 2022. Investigate opportunities to expand the use of the hot foam alternative. Invest opportunities to introduce the Mancar ultra-low volume lance alternative. Continue to investigate alternative methods of control. A further 2 options were identified through attendance at the APSI Amenity Forum events with demos planned for 2022. Investigate an accurate method of evaluating the environmental impact of options to allow comparison. Continue to participate in the Amenity Forum and work with colleagues and other authorities and APSI to implement best practice. Undertake consultation with residents of SLC with regards to agreeing at least one pilot herbicide-free area to allow accurate evaluation of the impact and views of the residents. Provide an update report on the impacts of pilot changes made in 2022 to a future meeting of this committee. Employee implications, no employee implications based on this report. However, some employees may be diverted for their current duty to support trials. No financial implications based on this report. Again, however, the service may be required to fund additional costs during 22 if pilots for alternative products. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Colin. Before we go any further, obviously we've reached just over the hour mark again, and according to standing orders, we really should have another break. So I'll call a break and we'll start again at, I think because most members have been going now for over 2 hours, I'll make it a 10-minute break and we'll start again at 20 past 1.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Colin had just finished his report, so I see that we have Robert's hand up. Robert, if you would like to come in.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Perhaps just a surprise. I was going to say that I was quite pleased with the progress that has been made on this particular matter. I think it shows what can be done as we move forward on it. It is a tricky issue, and I think the challenge has always been what the alternatives to glyphosate are going to be. So I welcome the sort of proposed steps as well. I did have a look at the foam thing a few months ago at Colin's invitation. I must confess I found it singularly unimpressive, but that was perhaps a personal nuance to the thing. It also the foam stuff seemed to dribble out, make a terrible mess of the place, and didn't have the long-term effect as far as I could judge. Anyway, I wanted to make, if I may, two or 3 points on it. First of all, I think the scope for manoeuvre is with the voluntary groups who want to go for pesticide-free areas, if you like. I think there's some potential for that. Secondly, in terms of widening the sort of areas where we try and avoid the use of weed killer, and perhaps some more parks or whatever. But I think thirdly, as far as I can understand, the most effective way of avoiding weed growth, which is what this is about at the end of the day, is actually where you've got a nice new pavement where it's been resurfaced or built relatively recently, and where, if you like, the weed beds are kept clear, so the drains are clear, the gutters aren't allowed to have mud build up and stuff like that. So it did seem to me there was actually some scope for manoeuvre in trying to focus on the, if you like, the better maintained pavements, if you like, or the newer pavements, with a view to trying to avoid or reduce the use of weed killer there. And then gradually, as we extend the renovation of pavements to widen that, because that seems to be the most effective way long term, rather than the chemical or other methods of going at it. So to make those observations, if I may, in contribution to what Colin's taken forward here.
Thanks, Robert. And I welcome these comments. I think they're very relevant to what we're looking at here. Yep, Katie.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a question on something specific. That's 7.3 when we're talking about the ultra low volume lands alternative. Is that essentially you could cover the same amount of area but with using a lower concentration of chemicals with a different tool?
If I can come in there, Chair, I can come in and
yes, Colin. Yep.
Yeah, I can come in Robert's points first, and I'll come into Katie's point. Yeah, in terms of the working with the groups, yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, and we have been approached by a number of groups about the use of herbicides. One that maybe springs to mind is down at Bigger Bunbraes. We actually I did a demonstration personally for Janet Moxley. Janet's very keen on the avoidance of the use of glyphosate within the Bigger Bunbraes. So we took the hot foam down there and we trialled it down there. We're genuinely trying the alternatives, because that seems to be, from what I can see from this new National Action Plan and what's coming out, that an integrated approach is something that the government, the UK government, is going to be looking at. So I think that what we've done this year will stand this council in good stead in going forward. And I think we just really need to try and develop it further and just expand the alternatives. In relation to the question about the Mancart ultra low volume, it's a handheld lance. It's a rechargeable electric lance. So it works very much like a controlled droplet applicator. So you have a bottle at the back that contains the raw concentrate. So you don't mix it with anything. It's basically just raw glyphosate. But the manufacturer's recommendations is that using this product reduces your use again by a further 50%. Now, we trialled it quite extensively last year in a number of areas. And my view would be that I was trying to think of an area where I have a smaller team working, and that's Rotherham Cambuslang. So I'm proposing that I would look at that area to use this system with the guys down there and actually gather the findings from them. It's a spot treatment machine, so only comes out narrow. It comes out narrower than a knapsack, so it's more of a spot treatment. But it can also be used for channels and verges. But certainly, from what I've seen, the staff liked it. They thought it was very comfortable. It is an alternative, and you are reducing the glyphosate again.
Okay. Monique?
It was just a quick one, John. It was to do with the 4.2, and it was talking about the current position, and it was for the areas of like frequency. It was just something that had flashed up on Facebook, and it was to do with Rotterdam Council, and they were saying that they had basically like chosen an area, and they actually did over 8 miles, saved the council £25,000. Just been doing the wildflowers, and I kind of feel as I know where we're trying to get to with this, and I think it's the right lines to go down to actually look at it. But I also think that for us as a council, that we do actually need to look at areas where it would be better just to actually have the wildflower rivers. Because see, if you think about it, when you talk about the linear miles here, those linear meters there, if you turn that into miles, it's about like 1,200 miles, so that's a saving of just under like 4 million just from doing like wildflowers. And I know that you care about the bees and different things like that as well. So it is actually maybe something for us as a council that we actually need to look at in conjunction with this, and it could maybe save us a lot of money. Anyway, thank you for your time.
No, thanks, Monique. Biodiversity and how we go forward is certainly something that the council does need to look at, and I think both councillors and the public are starting to take a different view on just exactly what needs to be cut back and what doesn't need to be cut back, what needs to be weed treated and what we can leave to wilder. So, it's something that I think everybody's now getting an appreciation of. So thanks for these comments. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to say a big thanks to Colin and the whole of the ground staff for doing all this work and making us better informed about the systems and the best ways of working. So I know it's taken a lot of time to do the work that they've done. So it's just to take that back to the team and say thanks on behalf of the councillors.
Thanks very much, Peter. I echo these remarks. I don't see anyone else's hand raised. So I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks very much. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll go on to item 7, the Clyde Peatland Action, pages 125 to 128. And I would invite Alistair to speak to this. And just as a wee add-on, we weren't sure initially when this item came forward whether this committee would be able to take a decision on it or whether it would need to go to the executive committee. But I'm advised by Geraldine that this committee can take the decision on it, so it doesn't need to go to the executive committee. So without further ado, Al, if you can come in on this, please.
Thanks, John. The report seeks to approve to host 2 peatland officer posts on behalf of the City Region for a fixed term period of 23 months, which will be fully funded by Nature Scot. Section 3 provides some background. Climate and ecological emergencies have brought into sharp focus the key role of peatland restoration has to play for us to try and drive towards net zero. Glasgow City Region has around 56,000 hectares of peatland, with around 2/3 of this found in South Lanarkshire. If peatland is to play a key role in the City Region's response to climate change, both in terms of contributing to net zero and adaptation, then action at scale is required in the short term. Currently, the dedicated resources required to drive this change don't exist, and in recognition of this, the GCV Green Network Partnership has secured approval from Nature Scot Peatland Action Team for the 2 new posts funded by Nature Scot. Section 4 of the report provides some more information in the proposal. The Clyde Peatland Action is a new initiative with the aim of which is to bring about a step change in the rate of scale of peatland restoration across the Glasgow City Region, and it's hoped it will have a significant contribution to Scotland reaching its net zero target by 2045. The proposal is to seek the creation of 2 officer posts with differing roles and remits. The initial focus of their work would be to development of an extensive programme of peatland restoration projects across the City Region area and hopefully identify some quick wins. These would then be developed in significant peatland action fund delivery and bid to deliver at scale. The proposed remits is developed by the GCVGP and Nature Scot are outlined in section 4.4. The post would be fully funded and all the work plans would be set by Nature Scot. Section 5 outlines that the employee implications, including confirming that interviews will be conducted in partnership with the other two parties, and although staff will be managed through lead officers in this organisation, in those organisations, South Lanarkshire will host the post and contribute to the day-to-day management of the posts. With regard to the financial implications, as outlined previously, the post will be fully funded by Nature Scot via memo understanding. I would refer you to section 2 of the report and ask that the content is noted and that the two posts be approved and added to the Facilities, Waste and Grounds establishment for a period of 23 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Alistair. Once again, South Lanarkshire has a chance to be at the forefront of decarbonisation. I think this is a really good thing to be involved in. I just couldn't believe initially when we looked at this that 2/3 of the peatland in this area is actually within the boundary of South Lanarkshire. There you are. So if any colleague would like to make a comment, or if Alec?
Yeah, John, I don't disagree with your comments at all about it being an important thing. It's something that's happening already. I'm not just sure what ground they're going to be working on, if it's agricultural land or if it's brownfield sites or indeed land in urban areas that have been abandoned. The fact that it's not costing us anything, we're simply hosting the two staff members, makes it a bit of a moot point. But I am not sure what they're going to be doing, because what you've highlighted there can already be done, and some of it free of charge. For instance, myself, it's RSPB that do that work at no cost to the business. So I'm hoping it's not just another bureaucratic level that's coming in and not actually going to achieve anything, because it is good work, it is being done, and it is already being funded by Scottish Government.
Thanks, Alec. You need another chocolate biscuit. You're beginning to sound cynical again. Al, have you got anything further to say on that item?
No, again, part of that will be developed once the people are in post, what the actual programme of work is, what land it is. And again, I would hope it would be complementary what's already been done rather than duplicate or replace. But again, that would come out once the programme of works have been identified.
Okay, thanks. Richard, see your hands up.
Hi, thanks, Chair. No, well, Alex stole the words out of my mouth, because I know an amount about peat because I have it, and it's difficult stuff. But I'm just wondering, perhaps, what on earth they're going to do to improve peat so specifically to make it more absorptive, if that's the right word, of carbon. I don't know. I mean, just I'm interested. We've got two people here. They're adding to the complement of staff, and I'm sure you need people to manage the process. But who's really going to be involved in this?
Well, again, I think the programme of what they'll come up with a programme of projects that we will go and get a source external funding for. Again, it's things like where there maybe be planted trees on peat bogs, so actually looking at taking them away and reinstigating the peat. So again, that's part of what these posts will go and do, is come up with a programme of work, which we again would filter back to the implications for South Lanarkshire.
But the programme of work is what I'm trying to get to. I mean, that could be pretty expensive. And are we going to be funding that, or is that going to be Scottish Government funded?
Well, again, that'll be part of what comes out of this. There'll be projects that maybe within South Lanarkshire that will be taken back to the council to decide whether we want to take them forward and maybe bid for external funding from. But again, that's what the posts are getting put in place by Nature Scot to do, is to come a programme of work across the city region, with obviously hopefully a focus on what we can do to improve peatland within South Lanarkshire.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Lynn?
Thanks, Chair. None of this probably applies directly to my ward. I'm not being parochial here, but because I'm exceedingly nosy, and I'm sure several of the members on the committee also are, could you possibly circulate, please, a list of the 52 identified locations that are in South Lanarkshire to committee members? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Al. Okay. Monique?
It's just to say that I'm fully in support of this report. I think it's a great idea, and it's just to say that it doesn't really matter whereabouts this happens in South Lanarkshire. the fact is it's going to be a positive difference that's going to impact on all of us, even if it's not in our area, because it's going to make a difference environmentally. And also, when I read this report, I just kind of saw it very similar to a couple of years ago when the report came through, and it was about food growing strategy, and it was like through the NHS that we had somebody then, I think her name was Marie, that then came and worked out of South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. So she fell under their umbrella, was paid for by the NHS, but basically like we got the benefit of it, and it made a difference in our communities. So I fully support this, and I think it's a great idea. And yeah, I don't think it matters where it is. It'll still make a difference and it'll still help everybody. All I would hope, John, would be that it wouldn't be a simple case of we would look on it as an authority as, oh, that's great, we're making a difference there, we're ticking that box, therefore it means we don't need to do other stuff. But I would look on this as really positive.
No, thanks for your comments, Monique. And now we have the real Pete on next. Pete.
Thanks, Chair. I have no authority just because of my name, but what I can say is from work that's been done before, over the last few decades, peat bogs have been getting drained. Farmland, it could be farmland, which is the peat bog's been drained. The process of draining the peat bog actually releases carbon back into the atmosphere. So I'm taking it that what this is about is re-establishing those peat bogs, blocking up the drains to re-establish those peat bogs, because the land itself is pretty much substandard for farming. And by doing that, increasing the amount of carbon that's captured. So there's dozens of places round about South Lanarkshire which would be open for that. But again, that would be done in consultation with the landowners at the time. And if trees have to be cut down again, it might just be at the time of harvesting the wood that would happen. I can't say for sure, but it certainly sounds like that to me, and that would be a good thing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter. I don't think it's thousands, though. I think they've commented there's 50 odd, but not to worry. Okay, look, I don't see any other. I think we're all agreed that this is pretty positive. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Which takes us on to an item for noting, item 8, the COVID-19 memorial tree planting. Colin, would you like to say something on this?
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the COVID-19 memorial tree planting project and to note the contents of the report. Under section 3, the background, I'll just go over the proposal was to deem to be the most appropriate way to provide a memorial to local communities for reflection, but would also contribute to the wider community objectives and officially recognise those who have passed away during the COVID-19 pandemic on a local basis, highlight the importance of tree planting for the environment and future generations, increase the level of tree canopy cover in South Lanarkshire, as well as overall environmental, social and economic benefits tree planting brings, and therefore carbon sequestration. Complement the work of the Council's biodiversity objectives by supporting a range of actions around increasing biodiversity. It's supported annually through the Council's Biodiversity Duty Implementation Plan and links directly into the aims of the Food Growing Strategy and Action Plan, and will contribute to the overall annual report in terms of alternative food growing provision. Section 4.2 or 4 covers the planting of the orchards, and before I go into that, I'd just like to highlight that 2 of the sites were actually moved, and other alternatives were suggested, and that was Bigger Bunbraes Park instead of Bigger Park, and Lanark Moor instead of Lanark Loch, and it was purely down to the sizes required to plant the orchards. It covered quite a big area. So those 2 alternatives were suggested as being suitable locations. We did manage to procure the appropriate trees, despite the issues with Brexit and actually getting a hold of plant material, which is quite difficult. So we got the good mix of the trees. As previously indicated, we did work with a lot of community groups to agree the most suitable sites for the areas to be planted. We had a corporate communication that was developed, We did contact the local members and community groups to help with the planting. And the trees were planted mainly in December, but with one that went into January. But we did have a number of groups that were involved, including, and these are just some of the groups, with the Friends of Stonehouse Park, Stonehouse Primary School, with the Sea Cadets in East Kilbride, with the Friends of Cambuslang Park, and with Grow 73. And I'd like to thank the two elected members that names were put forward to me, was Councillor Dorman and Councillor McAdams, who were on site helping as well. We will continue to monitor the sites during 2022 and ensure that we're required any remedial works such as replacing tree guards or tree stakers undertaken. It will take a couple of seasons for the trees to mature, providing they get left alone, and then hopefully we should see some fruit. And again, we'll continue discussions with local school children and help with the harvesting of the fruit. And no other additional implications other than those I've just stated.
Thanks very much, Colin. I had the opportunity to be down in Boswell Road Park. I think it was yesterday or the day before, just having a look at an article for the View, and all the trees there were planted. Unfortunately, 3 of them had been ripped out the ground already and vandalised. And probably that is something we need to look out for going forward. I really think something that we can do to involve local ownership of the area would be something that would help stop the vandalism going forward, without actually letting people know that this is really more a sort of memorial commemorative event in case we start getting other things added to it. But there must be some way going forward we can make local communities feel part of the thing, so that we reduce the vandalism going forward. But thanks very much. I see Monique has her hand up.
John, thanks. It was just to say thank you to Colin and all his officers for the professional way that they handled such a sensitive situation, and also like working with the different groups. I worked with the Sea Cadets, and they planted between 70 and 80 different trees at the Stuartfield Loch. They did pear, and they did 2 different types of pear, different types of apple and plum trees. The Sea Cadets were really appreciative because it helped them with their badges and their community engagement, and because because their group works out the TA centre, but it also works from the Stuartfield Loch, then they felt like real ownership of that. Their parents also got involved as well, and they thought this was an amazing thing that the council did. Also, the ground workers were fantastic because they actually explained the full process, from like the planting of the trees to the drainage to how long it would take for the different species to come on, and actually talked about the need for, we didn't need cross-pollinisation. So it was very, very interesting, and basically the Sea Cadets got a lot out of it. The kids thought it was absolutely amazing, and their parents were very, very appreciative of it, as were the Sea Cadets from having the support of the council. So it was just to say well done to everybody, and thanks very much for, I know that it was all to do with the other departments, or maybe it was your department as well, applying for the funding, but it's been a really special thing because COVID has been very hard for a lot of people, and for the fact that they now have this like lovely memory and a place where they can go as well to see what they've planted, I think gives real community ownership. And obviously it backs up what John was saying, that to stop vandalism and other things like that, you know, we do need the community buy-in. But I think you guys got it right on the button with this, and you've done an amazing job. So thank you very much.
Thanks for these comments. Thanks for these comments, Monique. Isabel.
Thank you, John. I would like to echo what Monique was saying and thank Colin and his team, because they did a huge amount of work. The ground services team really, really good. The preparation was excellent. And it was great to see the pupils of Stonehouse Primary there, along with the Friends of Stonehouse Park members. And it was really very, very good. And I hope the community, and I'm sure the community will really appreciate it, because they're all very excited about it and looking forward to the trees growing. So thanks very much again. Great work done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. And as I say, Colin can take that back to the team.
Yes.
I think I'll move the recommendations then. I don't see any other hands raised. We note this item.
I'll second, Chair.
Agreed.
Right, we agreed.
Agreed.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everybody's time today at the meeting. That's the last of the items on the agenda. So thank you very much for your participation as usual, and I'll see you at the next meeting. Okay.
Thanks.
Many thanks.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks.